First of all, thank you both so much for speaking to me. This was absolutely exceptional. And for Krystle, I wanted to start with your episode is really about finding balance between the yin and yang of danger and beauty. What I wanted to know is how do you approach each project being mindful of both the beauty and the danger, but also wanting to accomplish that goal of getting the right picture?
Yeah,
Well,
I think, go ahead.
sorry, go Dan.
Oh, well, I think, I'm 61 years old. I have an insane amount of experience. And I think experience can't be sort of underestimated. I think knowing the subject through experience. I remember my first rocket launch, for example, like I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't really know what to expect. I don't think I did the kind of work that I'm capable of doing now at that time, just because I didn't really know the way to do it. You kind of figure it out. And hopefully you pay attention to what you do. So the next time you can either do it better or refine it but I think every assignment, if you're talking about assignment work, or every project, you kind of, going into it, have a plan as to how you want to execute it. And then more importantly, be mindful of possibilities that may present themselves that may be better than what you thought going into it. Like you kind of pre-visualize the project, but then be open to what the universe presents.
Krystle?
Yeah, I guess for me though, I am probably dealing with a more spontaneous nature when it comes to adventure and storm chasing. So whilst I try to prepare, ultimately, like I'm at the mercy of Mother Nature. And it is tough with storm chasing because whilst I find storms absolutely beautiful, even witnessing tornadoes, but at the same time, as depending where that tornado has dropped, like it may be absolutely upheaving someone's life, or worse yet, there could be fatalities. And that is a very difficult situation to face because there is that moral compass of like, well, I'm documenting this, and I'm, for us, we get very excited and, love documenting these moments. But, depending how Mother Nature has decided to unfold that day, it could also be that underline of like, oh my gosh, this tornado absolutely destroyed this town. But at the end of the day, what we realize is that the power of photography and motion around storm chasing is actually vital to data collection and science. Back in 2013, there was an F5 tornado in El Reno, and it was absolutely devastating, where we lost a couple of some of the best storm chasers. And from that day, they were able to collect so much data from all the storm chasers in the area, and then therefore develop a better understanding of why the tornado acted the way it did that day, because it basically did like a 180, which caught everyone off guard. So thankfully, that photography can have an incredible power to help us understand, because there's still so much we don't know. Like only in the last 2 years, there are new theories about tornadoes and how they form, which is incredibly exciting and also humbling to realize we really don't know much about the world around us still.
Right. So for Dan, what I wanted to know is, your episode focused on, you said that life is a quest to relive boyhood experiences. But if memory always transforms as time passes, do you ever feel you will successfully recapture that experience?
I think kind of recapturing the familiarity of an experience, or of an experience that I'd hoped to have, is probably the most accurate way to frame it. I try to stay in that youthful sort of like awestruck state. And my wife jokes that, I'm basically like a 61-year-old, 12-year-old, because I kind of do a lot of the same things that I did when I was a kid. And I intentionally do that because I like staying connected to the inspirations that sort of like shaped where my career went and where my sort of thought process went. I still build models all the time, and I have electric trains that I play with. And, I love the idea of like having that familiar thing that is grounding for me. And, you know, certainly photography was always a part of my life as well. So I do that. And, you know, I ride my bicycle like I used to ride my bicycle for entertainment. I ride it for entertainment. So I think that's kind of staying connected to sort of like where our wellspring sort of maybe originated is an important piece.
Right. So for both of you, you know, art is created out of passion. That's why I think people love your photography so much. But can you talk about how your passion evolves over time? Does that change the definition of the freedom that gives you?
I'll let you go on that one first.
No worries. Gosh, I mean, the interesting thing about photography for me that it is always evolving. Where I started is completely different to where I am now. And I think that is the great thing about this series, is that it's finally bringing attention to the process of photography. Too often in the past, I think other people who have tried to do stories about photographers get a little bit too focused on the shot. And really, it's the process of photography is what keeps us addicted, or maybe not addicted, but just incredibly passionate about what we do. I have no idea where my path is going, and I find that incredibly exciting. But I am still, like, I think I'm still just as passionate as I was day one to the art that I am creating. And yeah, it's, who knows, like it was only in the last 5 years that I started storm chasing, and I'm moving into documenting bushfires. I still have a footing in the adventure world because I think that will always be a part of me, but I also appreciate that there are different interests and other things that come into my life, and I want to be able to pivot and evolve and keep educating myself.
Yeah, I guess I wouldn't add anything to that because that's pretty concise, but I would say that as photographers, we're dependent on subject matter. We're dependent on something to point our lens at, right? We're not like a painter has a blank canvas and that can turn into anything that individual wants it to turn into, right? We need to find our subject. And that sometimes can be really challenging, you know, especially if we feel like we've exhausted one subject. But what we hopefully are doing throughout the entirety of our path is the evolution of our voice, the evolution of our sensibility, the way in which we communicate with ourselves about what's important to us and what is important visually to us. I think that the key to that is to be mindful of that dialogue and to have that internal dialogue, because I think if you develop a sensibility, you can apply that sensibility completely across platforms, you know, whether it's storm chasing or rocket launches or anything in between. We have a voice that we develop, and I know that sounds or can sound kind of cliche and corny that we have a voice, but the truth is that's probably the best term to describe it. Is we have something that's evolved and it's a part of us, and it's a way of thinking, a way of thought, a way of approaching things. So I think that's probably our biggest ally as image makers.
One of the things that's fascinating, I was wondering, with so much technology, the use of modern technology, do you feel that we know that it helps to capture that photo, but do you feel that it can also have a negative impact in terms of not necessarily making something less creative or less lazy, but do you feel that old school is still the best versus the new version of what we have with technology today?
You want to take that one?
You're going to go first, Dan?
I'll take it. I'll start with it anyway. So I think what technology has enabled people to do photographically is it's giving them, so there's a technical barrier that kept people out of photography for a very long time. You had to have a pretty comprehensive knowledge, at least on image making on a high level, I should say, not out of photography, because when Kodak introduced the Kodak #1 in the late 1800s, there was that joke of everybody's a photographer, so much so that they called photographers, amateur photographers were called Kodakers, which is kind of a interesting term to describe people that just run around and take pictures. And I think people that were serious about photography sort of like lamented the fact that it had become so accessible. And now we're at a different phase where, you know, making higher quality images, you know, I make images with my iPhone on RAW that are like really kind of amazing. I mean, I'm blown away that I carry that in my pocket. But really, at the end of the day, all you get from the modern technology photographically is you get a picture that's in focus and properly exposed. And after that, it's image making. You know, it's a compelling image or it's not. And you don't get that through technology. You get that through your heart and your sweat. And I think that I find a lot of comfort in knowing that, you know, while the medium has become more accessible to people, the process of making compelling images has to be earned.
And yeah, I mean, just to echo that, is that if I think about a great image, there are very few images that come to my mind, which gives me hope as a professional that to achieve a great story, a great image, like it takes dedication, it takes persistence. It doesn't happen overnight. And yeah, as Dan says, like we are flooded with more images than ever because it's become so accessible. But I do believe there has been a laziness and people's assumptions of what they think makes a great image. But what we see online every day, most of it is incredibly forgetful. And I know that may seem harsh, but I just think that there has to be a precedent. And I think when one does take a great image, what a joy that is to witness. And what an incredible honor for that photographer to bring an image that could bring a world to a complete standstill, because a powerful moment, you can't deny the effect that it has.
I completely understand. So for you, Dan, what's interesting is your photography, your work seems to give a human quality to machines. Can you talk about kind of that process of giving life to an inanimate object?
I think probably, you know, I think I probably photograph a lot more people than I do machines. But I do love the idea of treating everything with a reverence and a respect and not having a sort of ulterior agenda, trying to tap into sort of like a truth. You know, the thing I love about machines, vessels, you know, I obsessively photograph trains and aircraft and spaceships and ships and those things as well. I'm interested in the idea that these vessels allow us as human beings to have an experience that exists outside of our own capability. So it took, you know, it was incremental, you know, if you think about like when the wheel was invented, or, you know, when people first decided they could float on a log across the river, and then they made it into a little boat, and then they made it into, and then so on and so on and so on. I'm kind of interested in that evolution and the idea that these devices like afford experience, and really that's what they're designed for. Sorry, I'm in a totally loud place right now. They allow for an experience that would otherwise not be capable, people wouldn't be capable of. So I think I just look at them respectfully, and it's not to anthropomorphize them at all, like the objects, but it's to kind of celebrate the energy behind them or the majesty behind them.
Wonderful. Thank you both so much for speaking to me, and thank you for inspiring others with your work of beauty.
No worries. Thank you
You
so
bet.
much for taking the time to interview us.
Yep. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.